EvilToaster is the quintessential nice guy. He ignores people's boundaries. He does not respect people's boundaries and basically doesn't understand that women might just want to platonically be friends with him. Throughout this document, you see evidence of the fact that EvilToaster only really talks to women in the hopes that they will want to date him. But there is an important part of this document that is expanded upon and now a second document because, yes, a second document has hit the tower, Mr. President. The part that I'd like to point out here, and this is a small part of a 57-page document originally, is the fact that EvilToaster has a real obsession, fixation on telling people that they're autistic. Subscribe! He loves to tell people that they're autistic, ignore when they say that they are not, or that they don't identify with those symptoms. Also will just offhandedly tell other people, oh, hey, that person is autistic, ignoring the fact that they're not diagnosed and don't identify with that. He doesn't care if they want to be called autistic, if they are diagnosed, he just decides that they're autistic. There is a point that I make when we went over the original document that it is my strong belief that EvilToaster, in some part, but not every situation, tends to call people autistic as a way to deflect rejection. In essence, it is a defense mechanism that he uses because he will start calling these girls autistic when they start politely rejecting him. Because he's a Twitch ambassador, and most of the girls that he has these interactions with are very small or new streamers. This is somebody who averages in the multiple hundreds, up to 600-700, and almost all of these streamers are not even partnered. I think literally one of the streamers in this entire document is even partnered at all, and a lot of them are specifically brand new streamers. So when these girls politely reject him by saying, I am busy, I don't have time, they politely reject him. They don't outright say, hey, you're fucking annoying, you're creeping me out. He'll start calling them autistic because he wants to assume they don't know how they're coming off when they're rejecting him. Because if you go in this document, he will start calling people autistic because he assumes that they just don't know that it seems like they're rejecting him, when the reality is they are politely rejecting him so that he doesn't f with their career. And I'm sure that there are a million other reasons that he does it, but it is specifically a tool to diminish someone's personal feelings and diminish being rejected so he doesn't have to deal with it. So he doesn't actually have to come to terms with the fact that he is being rejected and that they mean to come off the way that they're coming off. But the new document now expands upon this whole obsession with forcing autism onto other people. This preface is primarily talking about the person who wrote the document and their qualifications, but there is a note we'd like to have here. Please understand that EvilToaster is not a trained professional. They do not have a medical degree. While online autism tests have some accurate and are a wonderful way to identify traits and get you on the right path to getting diagnosed, they are not a 100% accurate source of diagnosis. I respect the autism community and their support of self-diagnosis, and this is in no way a hit piece against the community, merely identifying one person who is viewed as dangerous and has shoved his agenda onto dozens. The point I would like to make is the test he tends to send people is called the RADS-R test. It's called the RADS-R test. I want to be clear about what testing is used for in psychology. There is no test that can diagnose you with anything. No multiple choice bubble test can diagnose you or will be used to diagnose you by any legitimate professional ever. Even if you got an 800, you got the highest possible score on the RADS-R test, it would not diagnose you with autism, and you could still not be autistic. It is a legitimate test used for screening and for preliminary information. The only way to be officially and legitimately diagnosed is via an interview with a professional and otherwise diagnostic methods. It is not a diagnostic method to take the RADS-R. When you are just sending the RADS-R test to random people as a friend, you're essentially just sending them a BuzzFeed quiz. Is it a legitimate testing method utilized by professionals in conjunction with actual diagnostic tools? Yes. but a test alone is not a diagnostic tool. Definitely not one you can take on the internet. And I additionally want to make something else clear before we get into this whole situation. I think that self-diagnosis has a time and a place. Some people do not have the resources to receive official and professional diagnoses. I think it is more important to understand things you are struggling with and find ways to cope with them if you cannot get official diagnosis and treatment. However, official diagnosis by a doctor is vital if you need treatment. Official diagnosis by a doctor is vital if you need accommodations for school, like if you're in college, or from the government. Autism is not a quirky little trait. It's not a silly little hee ha ha thing that some people have that makes them a little bit funny. Autism is defined as a neurological developmental disorder. It is something that you have to work on and cope with your entire life. Not everyone can just take an online test and decide they're autistic and that be enough. Most people, I don't think that is true. There is a time and a place for self-diagnosis if you are utilizing it to find ways to cope on your own because you do not have resources. I do believe that. The way that self-diagnosis has been used in more recent years, I'm gonna be just 100%, has been irresponsible at best. And I do think the encouragement of self-diagnosis and saying that you don't need to be officially diagnosed has been a huge factor in autism now just being a hee-hee-hoo-hoo little quirky little trait that is not taken seriously. I've been told that I'm autistic multiple times by other people. I am not autistic. I know that because I live my life. I have ADHD and I have quirks that come along with having had a rough childhood. We'll say it that way. That does not make me autistic, but I do have 3 siblings with autism. I've worked with autistic people throughout my professional career as well. And I have a lot of autistic friends. I hang out a lot with autistic people. Official diagnosis is important. Saying that you don't need official diagnosis is not okay. We're gonna read through this document and some more DMs about this because holy shit, I was actually writing a script for a full review of this whole situation, but I've abandoned that script in order to talk about this specifically because I think this is absolutely unconscionable. And I already thought that he should be stripped of his Twitch ambassador title, but I actually think that some of the shit that is said in this document is so harmful that it borders on him needing to be legitimately deplatformed because some of this shit is legitimately dangerous. EvilToaster has a long history of diagnosing and encouraging his friends to take autism tests, going as far as referring to some as his own personal case study, even though they've never shown any history or medical background to be qualified. There's nothing inherently wrong with looking out for your friends and trying to support good mental health. However, the frequency that EvilToaster has shown to do this with dozens of his friends is a red flag. So this was something that was very much in the original document. This is just more examples. I even had a VTuber in my stream the first time I was talking about this say that it happened to them as well. I believe all of the people in this document are anonymous, so we don't know who they are, but these are the DMs. It's the fucking smile emote. We're already in the fucking smile emote. I haven't been able to sleep properly. EvilToaster says, yeah, by the way, I thought of more things. Anon says, oh, in regards to what, if I may ask? EvilToaster says, to the stuff we talked about. Also, hi, I just got back to my desk. Smile Corpa. Anon says, okay, what's on your mind? EvilToaster says, you're becoming a case study for me on these kind of topics. This is their RADS R score. These numbers confuse me. This is anonymous. EvilToaster says, you're more autistic than me. Pog. That is not what those scores mean. You can joke about it, to be clear. You can joke about it, but the problem is going to someone as if you are teaching them about something or trying to help them with something. We need to be specific about language. And having a higher or lower autism, RADS R score does not mean more or less autistic. Also, more or less autistic is not really a thing. It's sort of a web of different accommodation needs. But yeah, it is, dude, it's actually legitimately insane. The tests. I've been told by over 10 individuals that at some point in their interactions with EvilToaster, he has either unwarranted and unprompted shoved an autism test onto them, or guided a conversation in a way that he suggests they take the test. And this is information regarding those tests, which I spoke about already, but it's a spectrum. The spectrum argument has actually been adjusted over time. So they used to have sort of a linear spectrum that they used as information about how autism works. It's now more of a circle pointed out to me. It kind of looks like an EV chart in Pokemon. But like, this is because when you say spectrum, they usually you think of that like linear spectrum. This is now what is meant by like the autism spectrum. Because like some people will have like high noise sensitivity, but lower social difficulty or whatever, you know? So it's not linear. And the more or less argument isn't particularly important because it's not quantified that way, even within psychology, within like neurological stuff, you know? By researchers, it is just not quantified that way anymore. This is more so what we mean by the autism spectrum. You might have higher fixations, lower poor eye contact. Like that's what is meant by the spectrum. So like more or less doesn't really matter. You know, it's not also accurate, really. This is information about the online autism tests. Online autism tests are not reliable tools for diagnosing autism spectrum disorder. They may be useful for raising awareness and promoting early screening. As we said, right? It is a screening tool. It can be an awareness tool, but they don't take into account environmental or individual factors that may influence results. For example, cultural differences, linguistic variations, and the specific characteristics of the test population can lead to biases in the results. Individuals may also unknowingly exhibit biases in their responses, such as overemphasizing certain traits or underreporting others. So again, testing a test that you can take on the internet is not enough to diagnose you with anything, and they are not considered diagnostic tools. They are screening, and like they can help you identify who you might want to talk to a doctor, but they cannot diagnose you with autism, and no professional is going to diagnose you with autism purely from your results from the RADS-R test. That's not how it works. And this is important because like it can be a helpful tool when you're going to get diagnosed, but it does not diagnose you, and acting like it does is harmful. Self-diagnosis is important because it allows people to receive new information about themselves that may help them mitigate symptoms, validate their experiences, and persuade them to seek medical professional help. This is the important part, right? Persuade them to seek professional help. Self-diagnosing and tests give an opportunity to put their foot in the door and explore a deeper level. However, self-diagnosis becomes harmful when an individual never receives professional diagnosis because there are many symptoms that overlap within disorders. Someone who engages in self-diagnosis may start identifying with a disorder that isn't part of their psyche and therefore treat themselves and others differently because of it. This can lead to an incomplete treatment of mental illness/disorder, which in the long term can have serious effects on a person's mental/physical health, lifestyle, and more. And I will tell you, I used to think that I had borderline personality disorder when I was still dealing with daily, harmful, mental illness treatment, right? Because I've been out of that for several years. But I was like convinced that I had borderline personality disorder. Spoiler alert, I don't have that. And honestly, anybody who knew me at the time told me that I didn't have it, but I had decided that I had it. I went to a doctor who I did all the testing with, did all the screening with, all of that stuff. I bring up borderline personality disorder, and they said, no, you exhibit no legitimate symptoms of that. Stop. And then I got treatment for shit that I did have. Is it important to go to the doctor to get that cleared up? Absolutely. Because the reality is that they are trained to look for these symptoms. And also, additionally, the reality is that these symptoms overlap very significantly. I mean, even if we want to talk about things that are on this, like the spectrum, right? If we want to talk about things that are on the spectrum, depression on its own is a disorder. Fixations can be due to ADHD and dopamine seeking. Aggression can be due to PTSD. Noise sensitivity can also be due to PTSD. Like a lot of these things can be autism related or due to autism, but they can also be due to a bunch of other shit. And the only real one who is actually legitimately qualified to make that determination is someone who's gone to school for it. Does that mean that doctors are perfect in their diagnosis? Absolutely not. However, self-diagnosis is a tool and not the end goal. That is the point. And it can also mean if you have labeled yourself as being autistic, it could cause you to lean into symptoms that you didn't even previously had. Or it can lead you to seeing things that are normative, not due to neurodivergence, just regular oddball behaviors or just regular behaviors, and see them through the lens of believing that you're autistic. And it causes you to twist your mind around that diagnosis. It is legitimately harmful when not in conjunction with also getting legitimate treatment. There are ways that you could do it more safely. It is not typically done that way. So this is another DM from Anonymous. Really? EvilToaster. Well, the test results alone, yes. Anonymous says, well, that kind of explains a lot in my life, LOL. EvilToaster says, yep. Anonymous says, I guess we'll see 100% after I talk with my therapist. Now, if you are lurking right now, I highly recommend that you listen in real close to what we're about to fucking read, because this is the reason that I have dropped my previous script to talk about this. EvilToaster says, I wouldn't necessarily trust a neurotypical with diagnosing you since they fundamentally cannot understand what being autistic is like, but that's just my opinion. And also the opinion of almost everyone I know in the autistic community. We are big advocates for self-diagnosis. This is a Twitch ambassador spreading this kind of fucking mindset, this kind of information. So this is saying, hey, don't trust a medical professional with your diagnosis. So let's put this into other situations. You can't trust somebody who's not depressed to diagnose you with depression because they don't understand what depression is like. You can't trust a doctor who's not addicted to alcohol, who's not an alcoholic, because they inherently don't understand the experience of being an alcoholic. You can't trust them. They don't know what it's like. This is the logic that we're using, and it is so objectively, flagrantly harmful. This is so dangerous to say. You can't trust a neurotypical with diagnosing you. That's literally what they are trained to do. Discouraging someone from getting official testing and treatment from a professional. I don't even have words to put into how incredibly dangerous this is. You can't trust a professional with diagnosis, but you can trust EvilToaster and his quiz from the internet. That's what we're saying here. That is so incredibly harmful. And the additional reality is that specifically in the US, you can get no accommodations or treatment without a diagnosis. That is how the US insurance system works. I don't know how it works in other countries, so I'm not speaking on that. But in the US, you absolutely need a diagnosis if you need accommodations in your workplace, at your school, if you need accommodations like a disability from the government. And you absolutely need a diagnosis if you would like to get actual legitimate treatment from a professional, because you can't get insurance coverage without a diagnosis. That is ultimately, in the US, the primary benefit of getting a diagnosis is that you can get insurance to cover your treatment. If you don't have a diagnosis for anything, what the fuck are you being treated for? They're not gonna cover it. Discouraging professional diagnosis is not what it means to be an advocate for self-diagnosis either. But again, this is what I meant in the beginning when I said that the way that self-diagnosis is used now actively encourages that mindset that ASD is just this silly little quirky thing that people have. I can tell you, like I said earlier, I have 3 siblings with autism. All 3 of them are at different points on this spectrum with very different accommodation needs. None of them could get the treatment that they need if they had not been officially diagnosed. One of my brothers can more or less be perfectly normal in the world. He's socially very awkward. He's a bit of an asshole because of the way that he comes off, but that's also because he's kind of an asshole. It's just the way that he then words it doesn't help him out, all right? But one of my brothers can work a job. He can do a lot of things for himself. He can move in the world almost entirely as a neurotypical person. However, one of my other brothers absolutely will never be able to live without the assistance of someone taking care of him. Period. Autism is not a silly little quirky thing that just makes you a little bit different and unique. It is a legitimate disability. Most people with autism do need some form of treatment. It just depends. But flat out denying that official diagnosis is helpful or that you shouldn't do it at all is insane. And that is like, I already thought that this person should not be a Twitch ambassador because I did not want a person that behaves the way he does with smaller streamers to be a representative of the Twitch streaming community. However, this is actually legitimately dangerous to say, and the fact that he might have said this in public situations or to other people questioning is at the very best incredibly alarming. If this person does have autism and would like to get treatment, not getting a diagnosis bars them from improving their life via treatment, bars them from receiving necessary accommodations that they cannot get without a diagnosis. That is so insane. Anon then responds, so you'd say this test is fairly accurate. EvilToaster says, I mean, do you feel like the scenarios being tested are relatable to your experiences? Sure seems like it by the results. I've taken the RADSAR test because I got told that I was autistic so many times that I was like, damn, maybe I am. Okay? I'm going to go through this with you. And I want you to see what the RADSAR test actually is like. Because again, calling this in any way a reliable or valid diagnostic tool when it is not that, it's not considered that in any circle, is insane. I am a sympathetic person. Yes, true now and when I was young. I often use words and phrases from movies and television in conversations. Is that sometimes something that is related to like echolalia, right? Or stimming in autism? Yes. Do I tend to just consistently rattle off memes and shit I saw on the internet all the time and be fucking annoying? Also yes, but yeah, we'll say true only now because I didn't do that when I was younger because there was less memes. I am often surprised when others tell me I have been rude. I have never had that problem. I typically know when I have been rude. I have done it on purpose. Sometimes I talk too loudly or too softly and I am not aware of it. Not true. I do talk too loudly. I am aware of it. I don't know how to act in social situations. I would say it was true when I was younger, but that was mostly because I was an incredibly sheltered child. Could that be due to autism and not understanding social situations? Absolutely. It could also be due to the fact that I didn't have a lot of social situations. And this is what I mean, where this is not a diagnostic test. This is a screening test so that people can look further into it. I can put myself in other shoes, true now and when I was young. I have a hard time figuring out what some phrases mean, like you are the apple of my eye. I have never had that problem. I understand phrases like that. I only like to talk to people who share my special interests. This is true. However, this can also just be that you like to talk to people who have the same interests as you. This is not necessarily due to autism. And this is the point I want to make. Is like a lot of these things. Have you guys ever seen those TikToks where it's like, do you do this totally normal behavior? That's because you have ADHD. Some of this absolutely could be due to you having autism, but you getting a higher score on this does not mean that you are autistic. That is the point I'm trying to make about this, and I don't want to go through the whole thing, but when I take the test, it tells me that I have, what was it? I scored around 90, so there's stronger indications of autism, though non-autistics may score as high. I am not autistic. I had a weird childhood and I have ADHD. I don't need to go to a doctor to tell me that because I understand that. I've been around autistic people enough to understand the difference between my struggles with certain things and the way that they struggle with them. But again, that's why official diagnosis is important. It is hard to know what reserved people think. This is from Anon. I had someone I liked a lot before and it's hard to know what she's thinking. Toaster says, I'm having neurodivergent suspicions. Anon says, neurodivergent suspicions? EvilToaster said, me and another autistic friend of mine think Nia may be like us, which honestly would explain so much about her. I want to bring it up to her next time we talk, but we haven't had a time yet. Smile. So this person said, someone who is reserved and doesn't speak out much is hard to read. And his immediate response is, I think you might be autistic. Because I guess the inability to read minds makes you possibly neurodivergent. Typically, people who are reserved are harder to read. That is how that works. It has nothing to do with the person trying to read them being autistic. Trying to take any random thing and turning it in to a proof of neurodivergence is dangerous. We should not be diagnosing people on this type of shit or bringing that shit up. It's weird. An anonymous responds and says, LOL, I'm sorry. I'm so stupid. EvilToaster says, why? Anonymous says, because IDK had to end a conversation not awkwardly. EvilToaster says, autistic straight spotted. So because we've sent this word soup analysis of social commentary, and she wants to end the conversation, most likely because she's uncomfortable, autism. And so he continues. Is this the same day? No, wait, is this another situation? Oh, this seems to be a different person altogether. Holy shit, okay. A little bit, but you seem a lot better at appearing presentable socially than a lot of others. It's more difficult to sense in more outgoing people, I feel. Which is why it's hard to see in Nia. Maybe it's hard to see in Nia because she is not autistic. This is a person who was in the original document who I believe stated very clearly that they are not autistic and that they do not identify with those labels. Also, fun fact, some people chalk up just being introverted itself as neurodivergent. Only people who are not educated do this. Only people who are not qualified would ever do this. And I'm gonna be real, I've never heard of that shit before. Chalk up just being introverted itself as neurodivergent is insane. No, they don't. Maybe people, some people, but it's also the same people that abuse Benadryl on Twitter and say that histamines cause violence. I don't know, it's the same people. It's quackery, especially in deficit models, which kind of suck. Since there are measurable differences in needs for stimulation and accommodations to get a similar amount of work done in introverts. Just like optimal background music volume between extroverts and introverts. Okay, so what he's saying is that introverts and extroverts, there are differences in what they prefer for stimulation. Do you know who else that is true for? And like what other, like how else that can be said? Is that different people in general have different needs for stimulation to get a similar amount of work done and like different background music volumes, like in general. Everybody kind of has different preferences for these things. It has nothing to do directly with being an introvert or an extrovert. That's also realistically, the like introvert extrovert label is, it doesn't really mean anything all that important in psychology, you know? They're not really using a label of introvert or extrovert to diagnose anyone. It's kind of something more so that people use as like pop culture shit. It's talked about in psychology to a certain extent, but like it's a sort of a meaningless label and everybody has different desires in stimulation and background music. But he says, but that's a whole rabbit hole. Hole as in W-H-O-L, not hole as in a hole. I like to think that I'm quite versed in topics like this. I want to be nitpicky on his fucking words so badly. I'd like to think that I'm quite versed in topics like this. Not well-versed, just versed. Be it about neurodivergency or LGBT plus topics and autism especially. Anonymous says, you seem very knowledgeable. I just want to know if I need more help to grow, you know? I don't want to hurt others or make mistakes. I know making mistakes is a part of life, but if I can grow and be better, that'd be great. Lovely mindset. EvilToaster said, a friend of mine who very recently got diagnosed is having a great time now that she understands what she needs and knows how to help herself. Funnily enough, she was also ADHD and gender fluid, so the chance was quite high. I want to be clear, this is not really how this works. Anon says, I see. I wonder what kind of help I would need if I am diagnosed with it. EvilToaster said, in my experience, most people kind of just allow themselves to have better self-care. No. I don't even know what to say. Like, yes, but also no. It's really what we mean, what could be said is that they are able to care for themselves more effectively because they have a better understanding of why the symptoms that they have are happening. And so they can take care of that. But like getting diagnosed with autism and then just having a couple more bubble baths a week is not gonna do fuck all. I'm sorry. Another example goes, EvilToaster says, good question. So like, basically, if anyone is diagnosed with ADHD, it's like a solid 50% chance they'd also test for autism. Some people argue that they could be the same thing. Again, no one professional is arguing that, and I'm not opposed to that idea entirely. You should be because it's not true. Do you have ADHD? I want to say you mentioned that. Is there high comorbidity between autism and ADHD? Yes, there is high comorbidity. What comorbidity means, in essence, is that they are likely to exist in the same person. People will often have both. But it's kind of like the square rectangle thing. Every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. It's kind of like, it's a Venn diagram. It's not a circle, you know? Some people have ADHD, some people have autism, some people have both. Typically, if you have autism, you're more likely to have ADHD. But you know, what else is comorbid with autism and ADHD is like depression and anxiety. But if you have depression and anxiety, people are not going to assume that you have ADHD or autism. It just means that if you have ADHD, you often are more likely to have depression. Or like a lot of people who have ADHD also have depression. But it has nothing to do with like causality. It's a correlative thing. There is some amount of like correlation between autism and like gender fluidity, because autistic people have a harder time comprehending like social constructs. So a social construct like gender, if that's what you believe it is, I'm not getting into that argument today, is more likely to be broken down by autistic people. And they are more likely, oftentimes, to be gender fluid or gender, whatever word you want to use. But again, ADHD and autism are not the same thing. Anybody arguing that they could be the same thing are literally too uneducated to speak on the topic. Period. And that is in terms of like the most basic, low-level research that you could do about ADHD and autism. They are literally not even caused by the same things in your brain. A lot of people who have autism will have ADHD. It is very common morbidity, specifically in the direction of autism to ADHD. Not so much in the direction of ADHD to autism. However, they are not the same thing. If you have ADHD, you do not have autism. And if you have ADHD and you feel like you have a lot of the symptoms of autism, maybe you should go to a doctor to get that checked out. But do you have ADHD? I want to say you mentioned that. Anon says yes. EvilToaster said, and you're trans also. So Anon says, we never tested for autism in my family. EvilToaster says, 80% chance you would test for autism. This is just making up percentages and numbers right now. Anon says, my parents when young only thought I had trouble concentrating. EvilToaster says, very, very high overlap between trans people and autism, fun fact. Correlation is not causation. Numbers that have a relationship do not indicate that one number causes the other. Being trans is not a diagnostic criteria for autism. Having ADHD is not a diagnostic criteria for autism. They can have a correlated relationship where when one goes up, the other goes up, or when one goes down, the other goes down. But that does not mean that every trans person needs to be instantly tested for autism. He's literally spreading like insane misinformation and then also encouraging people to not get officially diagnosed. That's fucking crazy. He's using this information to validate his armchair diagnosis of this person that there is no way he can know well enough, and he is legitimately not educated in being able to even diagnose someone in general. And additionally, on top of that, even if he was like a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a neurologist, somebody who could actually diagnose this, it would be outside of his scope of practice. It would be, I think, considered illegal to just be diagnosing people like that, especially over the internet after some DMs, after being in VC a couple times. Like it's legitimately not like it's weird as fuck. It's so fucking weird. EvilToaster says, I also had a 2-hour call with Blank last night. It was nice. Anon said, yes, she told me. EvilToaster said, she's one of us. Anonymous says, what do you mean? EvilToaster says, autistic. Anonymous says, did she take that test or... EvilToaster says, no, but she checks all the boxes. And apparently she's been reading and researching on it already for a long time, which in itself is a box checked. But again, we see one of us calling someone who is not officially diagnosed to other people autistic. That is absolutely insane. Armchair diagnosing people with a lifelong disability is fucking crazy. Blank says, this is another anonymous. Hi, Toaster. I wanted to look into getting formally tested for autism, and I was wondering if you could help me understand what that process looks like or if you feel it's something necessary. A couple of things have started coming up in my personal life, and I think it would be beneficial for me to get an understanding of what I struggle with in a neurological and emotional sense. I'm down to sit on a call with you when we both have free time so I can discuss it over text chat, or we can discuss it over text chat, whatever you think is easier. The fact that someone felt that he was somebody that they should even do this with is insane. This is a random PNG Twitch streamer. I don't give a fuck that they're a Twitch ambassador. They're somebody who is autistic, I believe. I don't even know if officially diagnosed or not. This is a person who streams on Twitch. In no way is he qualified or should he feel comfortable having this conversation. In no way is he qualified or should he feel comfortable to tell her if it is necessary for her to go get formally tested for autism. That's fucking crazy. The appropriate response is to send resources for her to research herself for her area. He is not qualified to give any of this information or make any of these determinations. This is crazy. But of course, smile Corpa. Yeah. Anon says, yeet. What is your usual streaming schedule if you have one? EvilToaster says, great question. The historical schedule, LOL. Okay. If I happen to have free hour from work within the next couple of days, I'll hit you up if I don't see you live, LMAO. EvilToaster says, sounds good. And then EvilToaster then sends a tweet that says, not self-diagnosed, not medically diagnosed, but a secret third thing, peer-reviewed, saying that other autistic people are essentially qualified to make the determination that you're autistic. Only other autistic people who are not qualified professionals in any way, shape, or form and have no business doing diagnosis can tell you if you're autistic. Or the alternative way to interpret that is that it is appropriate to use that as an effective way of diagnosing yourself. This individual reached out to Toaster for help, hoping that Toaster's experience could help them come to terms and start the process of professional diagnosis. Toaster sent them a tweet that they either thought was funny or relevant, which says not diagnosed, not professionally, but peer-reviewed. It's insane to think that an untrained individual could ever diagnose someone regardless of any experience they might have had personally. The two called, and during the call, EvilToaster once again said that professional diagnosis was unnecessary. After recounting the events that happened on the call with me, this individual explained a much more upsetting call, unlike a few others in the same shoes as them. They were not ready for how abrasive EvilToaster was, nor were they ready for how heavily EvilToaster would declare his findings to be, you have autism. So this person then gives their personal conclusions about the situation. So that is the second doc on EvilToaster, the Twitch ambassador. I might make another video detailing all of the personal interactions he had with small female or femme presenting streamers. I don't know for sure because I feel like that's already been covered at great length. I think that situation alone, the way that he treats women and the way he utilizes his status to hold over women to keep them around is enough to say that I don't think that this person should be in a position of power. Someone who is so flagrantly willing to use the power they have as a Twitch ambassador, as a larger streamer, to continuously push boundaries and force interactions with individuals and make them uncomfortable is enough. However, this document for me is the easiest way to explain why I don't think that someone like this should be allowed to represent anyone. This is legitimately harmful. I don't want to be somebody who's like talking about deplatforming, okay? Because I think that's very serious. But the fact that he feels free to get into a conversation to determine whether it's necessary for someone to get formally diagnosed, actively discouraging formal diagnosis, consistently forcing people upon people diagnosis of autism, acting like the rads are as a legitimate diagnostic tool that tells you have autism. There are so many levels to this that are legitimately dangerous. It's not funny. It's not silly. It's not hee hee hoo hoo. And I think that this is absolutely indisputably not someone who should be representing Twitch or its streamers. Autism is not a silly, quirky, goofy little thing that you can just have and it just makes you a little bit unique and special. Autism is a neurological developmental disorder that will affect you from the time you are born until the day that you die. Does it affect you as severely, it's the same amount of severity for everyone who has it? No. But wanting to just offhandedly diagnose people you barely know with a disability is at best, bizarre and inappropriate. And at worst, when we add on the context of discouraging legitimate diagnosis and acting as if they are some kind of expert or liaison on information while actively spreading inaccurate misinformation, cannot be ignored. I do not want this person to represent Twitch. And that's kind of the point of this. I don't know what else to say. This person is legitimately dangerous. I will not doubt has caused legitimate and serious harm to autistic people or neurotypical people who don't have autism that he has interacted with in this way. This is objectively harmful behavior, unconscionable. You can bring up to your friend, hey, maybe I think you might want to get tested for autism. I think that you might have those symptoms, right? Here's a test, like, what do you think? There are ways to do this that are respectful and loving because they're your friends if you have a legitimate concern. But if you look back at the original document, EvilToaster loves to use that autism diagnosis he has created out of his asshole to invalidate people, call them stupid, airheaded, and ignore what they're saying because that's not what they actually mean because they're autistic. They don't understand how they're coming off. So it is not only a tool with which he, I guess, obsesses over trying to get everybody in the fun little autism quirky club, but it is also a tool he legitimately uses to manipulate people. Yeah, that's what I have to say about it. Maybe I'll make another video about the rest of it, but I feel like this is not being talked about enough. This shit is gross as f. Anyways, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the new channel, HexJuice Unfiltered, where we talk about whatever the fuck I want, including this today. I will see you guys next time. Drink water, touch grass, love yourself, get an official diagnosis if you have a suspicion of having a disorder or illness. Doctors are not perfect, but diagnoses are helpful and treatment is helpful. Love y'all. See y'all later. Bye-bye.